character options have firmly established themselves as the premier option for Doctor Who action figures. They've been producing figures since 2005, and it didn't take them long before they started to delve into the classic era as well. And since then, well, the rest is really history, because they've produced masses and masses and masses in the classic Doctor Who line. And whereas figures for the modern series have pretty much dried up by this point, they are still producing classic era figures to this day. In recent years, there's been something of a resurgence thanks to the deals that they've launched with B&M and Amazon, and moving to a model where they release figures online, exclusively through their website. But despite having a really impressive back catalogue, it got me thinking about what other figures I still really desperately want in my collection. And so today I'm going to count down my top 10 most desired classic era figures that are still leaving that gaping hole in my collection. Now, surprisingly, this is actually quite a long list, because you have to separate out things like classic companions, monsters, other enemies of the Doctor, and frankly, it's almost too much to contain to just 10 figures, so I've opted to do this in two parts. And really, I'm going to break it down into allies and enemies of the Doctor. And so today, I'm going to focus on the enemies. These are the big bads of the Doctor Who universe, and these are in my top 10, that have yet to see life in all their plastic glory. Okay, so first up, maybe controversially, I've got the Tetrap. I know a lot of people are probably rolling their eyes right now thinking, oh, that's such a terrible story and they really hate this monster, but I have to say, I have a lot of affection for this character. He's the first proper monster of the Sylvester McCoy era, and I actually think the design is really well made. I remember seeing this as a kid and actually feeling a little bit creeped out by it. I mean, what's scarier than a gun-toting vampire bat? In fact, one of the first Doctor Who figures produced back in the Daypole days was of the Tetrap to accompany Sylvester McCoy for Time in the Rani. And we can see from this very early and fairly primitive figure by today's standards, just what a lot of potential we have. He had the leather wings, he's got the extra eye in the back of his head, and I think it's just an overall like a visually impressive figure that you could have in your collection. And it would absolutely be very distinctive to anything else we have in this line. And he's perfect for army building too. Plus, it would be nice to have something distinctive to represent the Sylvester McCoy era, because we don't have a lot in toy form. Yeah, we've had a few Daleks and some Cybermen, but we've got nothing that's really just a unique monster to the Silver era, and I think, you know, he desperately needs something to round out the collection, and I think it would be really nice to have something like this in there. Okay, so next up I have the transparent Dalek from Revelation of the Daleks. Now, character options are no stranger to Daleks. Just when you think they've done every Dalek possible, there is another variant out there that you can repaint and exploit. And fans like myself love it. I love having different coloured Daleks. I love having every variant that you can think of. Daleks are just a fantastic design. But for me, there's one glaring omission. There's something that has never been done before, and that is this transparent Dalek. This is the Dalek that's sort of in mid-transformation, that's turning people into Daleks. I love it. I just think it's, you know, in the serial, it's really creepy and unpleasant, but, you know, as a figure, how cool would this be to have that transparent casing and then seeing the mutants inside? Oh wow, that'd be so cool. And who doesn't love that? I mean, we all love seeing the mutant reveal when they've done Dalek variants like that, and this is taking that just one step further. And the nice thing about this is that it feels like a really legitimate variant. Many people can complain about, oh, that Dalek's got a little bit of a different paint trim or slightly different baubles, and I can understand that the casual fan might not be that interested in collecting yet more Daleks. However, this one, it's hard to argue this one would be completely different, and it would be so cool. And it's just so sad that it's missing from the collection right now. Number 8, oh, it's got to be the Thecylorian. I don't know how this has been overlooked for so long. It's such a classic monster, and he makes multiple appearances across the show. You've got two stories to choose from. You can have the classic Doctor Who and the Thecylorians, or you can have Warriors from the Deep, which has a whole new look. And I have to say, I'd be happy with either of these. In fact, I'd want both. Now, fans can argue between what's the better look and what's the better story, but there's no getting around the fact that this is a classic monster. It's a really important monster in Doctor Who lore, and it's such a shame that we haven't got it in figure form yet, because it's such a striking visual character, and I think it would make an absolutely fantastic toy. And again, the potential for army building is infinite. Plus, it'd be kind of nice to have him sit next to the Sea Devil that they released a few years ago. Number 7 on my list is the Cyber Controller from Attack of the Cybermen. So this is much like the Dalek argument, where you could say we've got tons and tons of Cybermen at this point, and what's the key difference? Well, the first thing to point out is that this is the Cyber Controller, so he's a really significant character. He has a very different look, we can tell that by the helmet there, he has that big dome on top, and also thanks to the actor that was playing him, he's much bigger in body, he's a much more rotund kind of Cyberman. That's not something we're used to seeing. And while that's fairly comical in terms of the TV show, as a figure, I think it'd be really cool because it'd be really distinctive and very different to the other Cybermen that we have in our collections. But also, let's not forget that this is only the second time we'd seen the Cyber Controller in the series up to this point, and the last time we saw him was back in the 60s. And also, honestly, it feels like we've had every variant of the Cybermen from the classic show at this point. This is the missing one. This is the one that completes the set, in my opinion. Okay, so next up would be the Destroyer. Now this would actually be a bit of an oversized figure. This would be taller than your usual standard 5 inches, and that's always really exciting. So there seems to be some debate in Doctor Who fan circles about whether this is a good monster, whether it's a good story. However, I have to say, I think it's a really, really great design for this monster. I think it's a really cool looking thing, and for me personally, I actually really quite like this story. It's one of my favourites in the Sylvester McCoy era, and whilst the monster doesn't particularly do a great deal in the story, I do think he looks fantastic, and he's really, truly very menacing. And once again, regardless of how you feel about the story or the character, I think this would make an absolutely fantastic action figure. He would absolutely tower over the Sylvester McCoy. And again, I think it'd be really nice to just have some more representation for the 7th Doctor's era. And this is a very memorable, very visually striking creature. And I think you can see how cool it would be just by looking at, say, the Eagle Mosh release that was released recently. What's not to love about this? Plus, we don't have that many oversized figures for the classic era of Doctor Who, so it'd be really nice to have one in there that sort of towers above the rest. And to be honest, a dream scenario would be a whole set. It'd be great to have the monster, it'd be great to have Morgana, maybe even one of their soldiers too, and perhaps an aged brig. That would be fantastic. Hell, why not even go the whole hog and throw in Bessie? At number 5, I really want an Ice Lord. I've always really quite liked the look of this character. I think there's something quite regal and quite cool, something a little bit Darth Vader about the look actually. And again, he's completely different to anything else that we'd have in the collection, so it'd be really nice to finally have him in there. Plus, he's fairly significant. He shows up in quite a few of the Ice Warrior serials, so we have him in the 60s, and then of course he comes back in the 70s for a couple of John Pertwee stories. And, you know, admittedly, sometimes depending on what shots you're looking at, he can look a little bit silly. However, I still have great fondness for this character, I'm sure many others do too. And I still think it's quite a cool design, even though it might look a little bit dated now. Plus, I definitely think other fans would go for this as well. We already have an Ice Warrior, and of course he's been great, a really nice figure, and he's perfect for army building. But I do think it'd be really nice to sort of differentiate between him and a different class, so it'd be nice to have the leader there, the Ice Lord, to sort of boss them around. I think it'd look really cool. I can imagine having the Ice Lord there and bookended by 2 different Ice Warriors. It would look really nice in a display. Okay, things are getting really interesting. At number 4, I have the Ogron. Oh man, I thought these monsters are really scary when I was a kid. They show up a couple of times in the John Pertwee era. They're sort of glorified mercenaries, guns for hire, and very often they're employed by the Daleks. So that really says something. I mean, these are the thugs the Daleks hire to do their dirty work. Visually, they remind me very strongly of the gorillas from Planet of the Apes. They're very militaristic, they're very strong and scary looking, they're usually quite tall. And they don't come off too bright either in the TV show. They definitely seem very thug-like and very unreasonable. And when you put that all together, there's something quite menacing about them. And once again, we've got the potential here for army building, and I think they would complete a look as well. I think it'd be really cool to recreate Day of the Daleks. We've got a lot of these Daleks now. We've got the John Pertwee. It'd be fantastic to put a couple of Ogrons there and really complete that set. In my 3rd place, I have the Draconians. I think these would be absolutely fantastic additions to the collection. Now, admittedly, they only appear in one story, which is The Frontier in Space. But I do think that they have such a distinctive look that's really appealing. You can clearly see the influences of Japanese culture here, and the costume is very reminiscent of samurai culture. And I think this look is absolutely spectacular. I love those shoulder pads, the way they curve up at the top there. I think it looks really cool. I think it's a nice looking design. You're kind of mixing in some of the reptilian quality there as well, and I think you've got a pretty interesting looking alien. Again, this is something that would be so distinctive and so different in the collection. It'd be fantastic to have these in toy form. And if we were lucky enough to get an Ogron made, we could actually have a quite nice collector's set put out here. We could have the Draconian, the Ogron, we could have a John Pertwee figure, we could even throw in one of the Daleks, and a brand new Master variant as well. Okay, so this one's probably a bit of a no-brainer to most fans. It is, of course, the Yeti. Now, there is a long-standing rumour that they actually did create a mould for the Yeti some years ago, but weren't able to release it. If that's true, then I really wish that they could solve those licensing issues and actually be able to produce this, because it would be so wonderful and so many fans would be happy with this. As I said earlier, there haven't been that many oversized figures in the collection. We've had the Axon and we had the Crinoid, and of course we had the giant robot, but it would be really nice to have a Yeti in there as well. Again, it would be significantly taller than the 5 inches, and it would absolutely tower over the Troughton figure, and it would look really, really cool. It is, of course, a returning monster. It came back for a couple of stories in the 60s, and of course, most recently we did get that release of the Abominable Snowman, Second Doctor and TARDIS, and that Second Doctor mould was absolutely wonderful in his fur coat. Really, really loved it, and all we need now is that Yeti to go with it. That would be absolutely fantastic. Okay, and my number one, my most desperately wanted figure that they do in the classic series is, of course, the Candyman. Wait, what? Okay, so this is more like it. My number one choice is, of course, the Anthony Ainley Master. Now, some of you are probably already shouting the screen saying, but we already have one. And yes, you're absolutely right, Character Options did release an Ainley Master in a Planet of Fire 2-pack with the 5th Doctor, and the likeness is very, very good. The only problem is that it's on this suit body, which is how he appears in Planet of Fire, but it is a long way from being the definitive look that we associate with the Anthony Ainley Master. His most predominant look is in those early years of the Peter Davison run, where he has those frills and the high collar, and I think this is the one that fans really want to have a figure of. The Planet of Fire figure set came out many, many years ago, so it's a bit of a mystery why we haven't had another Anthony Ainley Master variant in all these years. He's such a predominant and reoccurring character in the show. And he's locked horns with every version of the Doctor since Tom Baker all the way through to Sylvester McCoy. And he sported a few different looks across all those serials. But for me, there's 2 looks that I really like. I really like this traditional look that we really know him, but I also like the 5 Doctors look as well, where he has the high collar and the sort of cloak effect. I think that's a really good look for the Ainley Master, and it's very memorable. So ideally, I'd probably want a figure of both, but either one of these would make me very, very happy. And because he's so woven into the fabric of the 80s, you could put him with so many of the other figures and you'd instantly complete a set. And he'd look at home in virtually any diorama or display you want to create. It's strange because they have that head sculpt and it's perfect, it's absolutely wonderful. I just don't understand why they haven't created another body for him. Surely it can only be a matter of time before we see this happen in reality, but until then, sadly, I'm just going to have to keep my fingers crossed. I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as I'll be posting more videos soon.